Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast. If this is your first Sencast, then welcome to the podcast. The aim of the podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots and lots of people and help everyone learn more about special educational needs and disability. In this episode, my guest is Emily Katy, an author and blogger, and also a mental health nurse who has just released her first book, Girl Unmasked: How Uncovering My Autism Saved My Life. And in this episode, we're discussing masking, school, and mental health. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. Everyone knows we help schools to show the small sets of progress pupils with SEND make across a wide range of abilities and ages. But do you know about Autism Progress? This is our framework for helping profile a pupil's autism and how it impacts them. It is based on certs and looks at communication, social interaction, flexibility of thought, and emotional regulation. Autism Progress also includes a wide range of strategies to help support pupils. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through Autism Progress and our assessment software. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing autistic masking, school, and mental health. Joining me this week is Emily Katy, an author, blogger, and mental health nurse who has just released her first book, Girl Unmasked: How Uncovering My Autism Saved My Life. And that's reflecting on her life leading up to her diagnosis. And as well as being an author and blogger, Emily is also a mental health nurse and trustee of the Autistic Girls Network. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hello.
She wanted me to do some sound effects, so...
Oh, I'll put the purple one with it.
Oh, you want the... Oh, sounds odd. I'll do it together.
Yeah. That made me very happy.
Yay! In almost 4 years of podcasting, we have never used those buttons.
Really?
They've been there the entire time.
But the thing is that, so one of them is pink and one of them is purple, and they just look really tempting to push. And when you push them, they make such a great noise that I can't believe more people don't want to push them.
It's another thing I'd have to really worry about of the correct time of pushing them.
That's true.
It's a whole level of complexity that I really can't handle worrying about. It's just, yeah. I can even change the noises for the different buttons I can program.
No. Let's not do that.
But then I've got, so it's all. But anyway, so you were diagnosed with autism at age 16.
Yeah.
Going through almost your entire time at school undiagnosed. Not because you weren't struggling, and I mean internally rather than maybe externally struggling.
No, both.
But I'm guessing because you didn't really fit that typical presentation.
Yeah, well, sort of the perceived typical presentation, I suppose.
The boy presentation.
Yeah, or just, I don't know. And the thing is, it wasn't even like I wasn't externally struggling. From the age of 13, I was having panic attacks at school. I was rocking under the desk tables in classrooms. I ran away from school a few times. They had to take me off site when there was a fire alarm because the noise would trigger me, would set me off so badly. So they took me off site to McDonald's. They would, suggest I wore earplugs. I could go to the library where it was quiet. They knew they had to give me notice of things like change. And, I don't think I wasn't externally struggling. I don't know how that was missed, but clearly autism just wasn't understood.
Yes, minor thing, having to take you to McDonald's instead of fire alarm. Either that was genius or something else, I don't know. But before we started recording, you sort of said you were the child, the SWAT, the nerd, revised constantly, did the homework the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, if that went wrong.
Yeah, I would panic. I remember revising for one of my exams and I was very particular over how I used my flashcards, and I ran out of a particular colour of a particular type of flashcard. So I couldn't finish the topic. So, I got very, very upset and then decided I couldn't do the rest of the day. So I had to get into bed and basically, melt down for the rest of the day. And then I could start again the next day. So, I was quite particular over revision, over schoolwork. I took things very seriously. I got very worried about it all.
So from age 13 to age 16, for you kind of, for me, I'm literally going, it's quite autistic. That's quite a typical, not struggling, hiding sensory. At what point did someone say, oh, this could be autism?
Oh, I don't know if anyone actually said that. So I was admitted to a CAMS unit when I was 16 and I was there for 3 months. And my auntie works in kind of autism and special educational needs, and my cousin's autistic. And she'd kind of mentioned it once or twice, and I'd just been like, no, that's stupid. And, my parents didn't really understand it at the time. But when I was in the unit, there was a girl there who was autistic, and we would both like get stressed whenever there was like the loud alarm bells and everything. And at that point, I was really struggling with my OCD. I was studying psychology A level. I came across a study that was like talking about the links between OCD and autism. And I was like, oh, okay, mate. I was like, that's interesting. So then I actually started looking it up myself. And one day when I was on leave, I wrote a list of all of the reasons why I could be autistic and the reasons why I couldn't be, but the reasons why I could. And I gave it to my parents. And I was like, what do you think about this? And they were like, that's interesting. So then they spoke to my doctor, who was my doctor at the time in the unit. And I think they met with him to talk about my childhood years and things. And then kind of a week later, he came up to me and was like, Emily, I don't think you're autistic. I think you just have high social anxiety. Bearing in mind, I was in this unit. I was sectioned. I was having the most meltdowns that I've ever had in such a condensed period of time. My risk assessment said things like difficulties with change, difficulties with strangers, anxiety, loud noises, and all the ways to mitigate that. It was literally, I look back through my mental health notes and it's like reading the diagnostic criteria. But yeah, they just didn't think I could be autistic. And I think I've always been quite social. I've always had a lot of friends and, I've always been very academic. I've always been quite good at expressing myself verbally, maybe. But yeah, so then when I was discharged from the unit, my community consultant, the first thing she said to my mum when I refused to go in to see her from the waiting room because she wasn't who I was expecting to see, she was like, has autism ever been considered? My mum was like, well, not really. And then that kind of kickstarted the process of me going and having an assessment.
Wow.
I know. When I think about it, I just think I just can't believe it was so obvious at that point in my life. Not before, when I was kind of my primary school years and maybe even kind of year 7, year 8, maybe not so obvious. But once the anxiety started and people were looking at me and I don't know how it was missed.
I think one of the things, it's that time where you become much more independent and your own person rather than your parents' child, which I think even early on in secondary school, you can be just their child. And as you kind of become your own person, you start living more independently and it's more on you. And also when your GCSEs, which are rather important in your life, are coming up, it's all hitting you at the same time. It's fascinating. You literally kind of diagnosed yourself by reading the criteria.
I don't know, because I think I was so like I said, I had a list of reasons why I could be autistic and a list of reasons why I couldn't be. And I think my understanding of autism at the time was very much based on the stereotypes. It was based on, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory, who isn't actually said to be autistic, but everyone thinks he is.
Yep.
And that was sort of my idea of autism in my head. And I thought, well, I've always had lots of friends, but do autistic people have friends? Because my whole idea of what autism was very, not what it actually is, as is the case for a lot of people. So I don't know if I actually self-diagnosed myself, because when my doctor said to me, I don't think it's autism, I think it's just social anxiety, I was like, oh, okay. And just moved on with my day. Like, it wasn't like anything. It wasn't like I was like, oh God, I was wrong. And then when I went for the assessment, I still didn't know. I told them that their whole assessment was completely biased because I was in a clinical environment where they were actively looking for the traits of autism. So that was going to be like confirmation bias, because they were just going to spot what they wanted to see. But then obviously I walked away from that assessment with a diagnosis, and yeah, the relief I felt and in that moment was quite something.
It is because I got diagnosed where we are now a year ago, and it was a really interesting experience because I was adamant I was autistic and ADHD from all my research. And it was the whole thing. And even my daughter's going, how do you know they're masking? What is it? How is it you're telling I'm masking and not doing it naturally? And there's a load of things I found to test about the whole process really, really interesting. But I also sat there and half of me was focusing on the assessment. The other half of me was kind of looking at the assessment going, is there a bias? It was really, I did find the process really interesting. But I think whenever I talk to people around autism, it's generally we're looking at that external action or the external things they're doing. we're not really looking about that internal, how it makes that person feel. And I come across this quite a lot. Oh, they just this. We're just really belittles what's going on inside. Oh, she just doesn't like loud noises. It's like, that's a little bit of an understatement. You have no idea what's going on inside. And one of the podcasts I did with Dr. Jamie Galpin and Claire Ward was about this certainty. So when you're hearing noises, all the processes to make you know, am I safe or am I not? And it's just there's so much difference in the way you think, and not every autistic, but this thing, because it is that big spectrum. But I find it really fascinating. And you talked about you kind of went through it all, and you fitted that very typical description of autism.
Yeah, to some extent. Because some of those, it was very observable. But I suppose because they thought, oh, this has started with anxiety at 13, maybe it was all put down to anxiety.
Yeah, and I think when we hear when it says they struggle with, we're looking generally, I think a lot of people look for a disruptive way of showing they're struggling. And I think with girls, it's very much not that disruptive. It's more like shrinking into themselves or hiding from the world, not lashing out. And I think those big differences between the typical boys' presentation, because not all boys present like that, and that girl's presentation where it's kind of, people don't recognize it.
And I think, but then again, there are girls that don't present like that, and still the diagnosis is they're less likely to be diagnosed at the same age as boys, even when they present with very similar traits. And why is that still the case now? I do think it's got better though over the last sort of 5 years. I went into my sixth form to visit a couple of years. Oh no, maybe not even a couple of years ago, because it was after I'd got my ADHD diagnosis, which was last January, and one of the teachers said to me that she thinks if I had been in the school kind of even 3-5 years later, she thinks I would have, someone would have said, could this be autism? She said that since me, there's been a lot of girls that have come through and actually have been recognised. So I do think that in some places it's changing. The conversation on autistic girls, autistic women has been more prominent in the news, over the last kind of couple of years. But yeah, there's still a long way to go, I think in autism understanding in general.
I think people are finding out something is a complete spectrum. I did a webinar recently where I pulled up the NHS criteria for autism for young children and for adults. And out of the 9 criteria, only 2 of them fitted me.
What was the criteria? Which was that? Was that the DSM?
No, it was the NHS just have a list.
Just their list of symptoms. So
yes.
That's oh, right, okay. Oh, sorry, I hate the word symptoms. The reason I say symptoms is because that's probably what they use, but I prefer traits because I think symptoms has those connotations of illness and stuff. But yeah, the DSM-5 criteria, you read it and it's so negative.
Yep.
It's restricted, repetitive patterns of interest and behaviour. Why can't it just be intense interest? If someone's studying a PhD and they're spending their whole day, focused on whales or whatever it is, no one thinks that that's restricted and no one thinks that that's bad. But as soon as you have a 5-year-old that all they want to talk about is whales, it's, oh gosh, let's get them some other interest. But actually that's amazing, the fact that they have this capacity to learn so much about what they're interested in, and also then apply that to other areas of their life and help them to navigate, friendships and learning and all sorts of things. But yeah. And what else does the criteria say? It talks about kind of rigidity and very much like deficits. That's the word that they use as well. And obviously, yes, there are things that being autistic or ADHD or whatever can make life really difficult. And I don't think that just comes from society. I think it can also come from, your brain can make things really hard for you. Painting a brain as having deficits, I just think isn't very helpful. It's not a nice way to frame someone's brain.
Find is it's almost when you read those criteria and those deficits or those symptoms, it's kind of like it's a constant. Is you will always have this, whereas most people, it's in certain situations. So when these situations happen, I really struggle with all of this. Whereas actually, when I'm just out with friends, I don't struggle. They accept me. Life is all right. And that's the thing. It's that moving to that social model of looking at the situation you're in and thinking. And that's the thing. When as adults, you choose your environment.
Yeah,
there is so much more choice in your life.
Massively, yeah.
You choose where you want to be. You choose where you work. If you don't like those people, you get another job. Or you move to. There's so much. You don't have that as a child.
You are forced into the same environment every day, regardless of the effects that it has on you. I can't tell you how much better my life has been since I finished uni and have been in a stable job. The last year and a half have been the best year and a half of my life. And
But you know you've autistic, you're struggling.
But there are days that I do still. I do. I've had panic attacks at work. There have been times when my OCD's been quite bad, but actually I'm able to leave the room when I want to. I can go to have lunch when I want to. I can go to the loo when I want to. Like, obviously you plan it around meetings and stuff, but at the end of the day, if I need to stand up and go for a walk, I can. And there's so much more freedom in how you plan your day. Obviously that comes with what sort of job that you're in, and I'm lucky enough to be in a job where I can do that. But at school, you just don't have that choice. From the minute you arrive at school, it's your whole day, and how you regulate yourself is literally governed by what someone else is telling you to do.
I just want to just pause on that, because that is one of the biggest challenges. And I think people think that, oh, we've got to pay them because life out of school will be exactly the same. And you kind of hear the way people speak of, if they're struggling in school, they're going to struggle in life. It's like, no, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah. I literally
Not always, just be really clear.
I posted a Instagram story the other day because we had an all-day team meeting, and I sat there colouring. I coloured the whole way through this team meeting. And, my manager actually gets out colouring books and stuff, because there's kind of a few neurodivergent people in the team. And also, some people just concentrate better, regardless of whether you have ADHD, autism or not. Being able to colour or doodle can actually help you focus better, depending on how your brain works. And I posted the story, and it said something like, I was always told off at school for colouring, because how are you going to cope when you have a real job? And then you're sitting here. I literally coloured the whole way through my team meeting for about 8 hours. I focused so much better. I was able to participate in the conversation when I needed to, and, just felt less anxious as a result. And yeah, we just need to change the way that we think about how you have to manage an adult life and what professionalism is and things like that.
That whole colouring, my question was going to be, what was your level of contribution? You were present, you were there, you were listening. That just colouring occupied that little bit of the brain, which gets bored. And then you're able, that rest part was you able to listen. And I do the same. I literally, if I ever go on, I do some Microsoft courses, I sit at the back of the classroom, because I know I'm going to get bored, and I'm going to lean back on my chair. I'm going to go on social media, and I want to distract the least number of people possible. On Friday, I was at Sensible 24 conference. So you sit in a room all day. I need to go stand up every so often. And there are breaks, but sometimes I'm going, no, I need to go have just a walk around, and then I'll come back. And you leave as an adult, or you go to the toilet and you leave quietly with so little disruption. You do the bit you need, and you come back in, and you're ready, and you're back, and you're learning, and no, not allowed to do that for children. We're not even teaching them how to do it. We're just stopping them from doing it.
And, I can forget something at home now. Like, if I could arrive at work having forgotten my laptop, thank goodness I never have, because it would be so annoying. But no one would tell me off for that. There would be natural consequences that actually my day would be harder, because, I'd have to get a replacement laptop, and it would just add stress. But there wouldn't be this kind of imposed punishment of, you've got to go and sit in detention for an hour afterwards. It's actually the natural, those natural consequences of what happens. I remember one of the only visible meltdowns I had at school before my anxiety got really bad was year 7. I left my protractor at home in class. And so I was in maths. My teacher, I found her quite scary at the time. She got quite angry at me, and I literally sat there hyperventilating, couldn't breathe. I was so stressed because I'd left my protractor at home, and I was scared about, getting a detention. Obviously there are kids that don't care about that at all. And that is great. I wish I could have been one of those kids that didn't worry about stuff like that. But for me, that meant I then started checking my bag 3 times at night instead of once. And I would check again in the morning. I would worry about it constantly, all over whether I'd remembered to take my protractor. There are so many, I think, autistic, anxious kids going through that stress every day when they won't have to deal with that threat when they're an adult. Maybe, obviously, in certain jobs, you might have a scary boss. But like you said, hopefully you can leave if you're, able to. But yeah.
I just don't get what the point is. It's a child who just doesn't care. And even if you shout at them, it have no impact. Or it's a child who really cares, who made a mistake. And also, I'm in a building where there's probably 50, 60 spare protractors around. Yeah. If you forget your laptop, what do? You have to get another laptop, and there's a load of annoyance because it's not got your emails on. It's not got that file you just done. It's annoying, but you will find a way and you'll go, I won't do that again because that was really annoying.
And actually, if you have a good manager or a good team, I feel very supported at work. They would help you put in strategies. So, okay, how can we help you to remember? If you are constantly forgetting stuff, it's how could we help you to remember these things? Can you set up reminders on your phone? Can, you prep the night before? It's not a punishment. It's actually strategies to help you remember those things. Half the kids in detention in schools probably have ADHD. Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement. But
Might
so
not
many,
be.
I don't know, so many of them are getting constant detentions because they're forgetting to bring their stuff, bring certain things to lessons. That's a trait on the diagnostic criteria that they're being punished because they have a disability that is impacting them. Yeah, rather than, I suppose, being supported and given strategies to help manage that.
But it really is. It really is frustrating. And I was talking to Victoria Bagnall, who I podcast with, about executive function, which is that organ, all those sorts of skills. And I want to come up with like a nice, almost black and white kind of criteria list of kind of saying this is where this person is, and this is kind of helping them see that there's no point in giving detention for something they can't do. It's like getting a detention because my French is rubbish. It's like, I'm trying, I'm doing my best, but I'm still rubbish at French.
And actually, especially because detentions don't normally start off after school, they often start at break or lunch. And then what you're doing is you're making them sit through, even longer without having that movement break and that time to decompress a little bit, which is going to have a knock-on effect on the rest of their day. And then does that then influence their behavior in the afternoons? And yeah.
I think I made my daughter late for school last week because it was really raining. So can I get a lift? And I'm a bit of a soft touch, and I was driving, so like, okay. But it's completely wrong direction, and there's roadworks that way. And it took us about 6 or 7 changes of the lights to get through the roadworks. Really annoying. And you're just watching it going, it's getting later, and she's going to be late. I'm going, so she's probably going to get a detention. She said she's probably going to get one of these lunchtime or break detentions because of the roadworks, because of I left late because I had to do something before I left. So she's going to get punished by being 5 minutes late because of traffic and me. But the thing that I don't get, and this is the thing where you seem a very conscious, very conscientious person. I'm not, and I'm not saying I'm an asshole. I'm not saying that. What I generally do is I look at what is that implications of my daughter being 5 minutes late. Yeah. They generally have a 15, 20-minute registration period at the beginning of the day where they take the register and give out important information. So if you're 5 minutes late to that, what does that really mean? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, being late was something I always stressed about, and I think it probably came from school. When I started my job, I do travel a fair distance to get to work. It takes me about an hour to drive to work most mornings. It's the M25. The traffic's a nightmare. And I used to get really worked up about it. I once had a panic attack because of the impact of it on my day. And actually, my team lead just says to me, we can't control the traffic. We cannot control the traffic. So what if you're 5 minutes late? It doesn't matter. Most of the time we work through our lunch breaks anyway, or we work 5 minutes later anyway. So, and I just think that reassurance of we cannot control the traffic is so helpful, but you have to unlearn a lot of that stuff from school. And obviously there are times when being on time is so important, but obviously there are times where you can't help being 5 minutes late to something.
Generally, if it's your typical route to work and you know it takes you 50 minutes, but sometimes 55, you'll probably leave an hour and get maybe 5 minutes. When that takes an hour and 20, then you have no control. Something happened. Someone's life probably is in danger. Ambulances were probably, or something. And that's life. When someone says, oh, I slept through my alarm, then that's a different thing. That is, oh, okay, so why did you sleep through your alarm? And sometimes you'll sit there going, oh, you're drinking the night before. Or sometimes it's not even that. It's sometimes worry, but you've got to unpick why that person is late. And generally, sometimes we people out here, and I really don't care. Because the fact they're already walking in stressed means you see on their face that they're already worried. And I'm literally going, why would I even make this worse?
Yeah. There are I think a lot of kids arrive at school dysregulated enough as it is before they're then having to sit through 5 hours, 6 hours of lessons and everything that comes with it. I mean, I know that when I sat down in registration in the morning, I had already, had 2 hours of stress of trying to get things right. When I was struggling with my OCD, there'd be the OCD compulsions that came with that. There was the anxiety. There was trying to get out the door, trying to get everything ready how I liked it. And then just even the journey to school could be quite loud. It could be quite busy. You arrive at school, when you walk in, it's just chaotic and it's so busy that by the time you sit down in class, I mean, I wasn't necessarily in the right place mentally to be able to learn anyway. But it's so hard for schools because obviously there are so many kids, and how do they have enough time to, I suppose, go through with each child? Okay, why are you late today? And then applying those strategies. It's very difficult. Yeah, it's hard.
So you talk about that morning routine being really stressful.
Yeah.
Is that morning routine different for work? Is some of it still stressful because you're kind of getting ready for the day?
I'm always in a rush. I mean, I'm always in a rush, but I suppose my OCD is more managed now, and also just my anxiety. Like I don't dread going to work, whereas I would dread school. So the whole morning. I mean,
so in theory, you're probably doing very similar things.
Yeah.
But kind of the expectations put on you and that day ahead is probably changing how you're viewing it.
Yeah, I don't worry that I'm going to be shouted at. Luckily, I know some people do at work, but I don't worry that I'm going to be shouted at. And I know when I arrive at work, it's quite predictable. There's a lot of certainty. Obviously, stuff will come up throughout the day, but in terms of the sensory environment, I work in an office with kind of clinics, and it's just very calm. So when I get into work, I normally have sort of half an hour just to be calm. I could listen to, headspace, meditation. I could listen to music while I'm getting ready. Like there's that time to decompress, I think. And it's just not loud. That's probably the most important thing. It's just not loud.
In theory, that registration process, once you've done the registration and notice, that could be that time where you can literally get your phones out, just help yourself regulate. But no, we're banning phones, and headphones probably aren't allowed and things like that. And it is, as you said, you've got a lot of people to manage.
Yeah.
So you go for a very simple set of rules which work for the majority, even if maybe that majority might only be 50 or 60%, not maybe the 90% you think it does.
Yeah, it's really hard. There are so many kids in a school and not enough teachers, not enough resources. How do you individually tailor school and the curriculum for every single child in a classroom? I don't know.
It's a challenge, but that's a whole other, that's a very long conversation, which I do touch on various podcasts. So if we go back to when you're at school and you're hyperventilating because you don't have that protractor, do you know kind of, because it is when you're in that moment, kind of did you feel your teachers were disappointed in you, angry with you, they were sorry that they made you, how do you remember how kind of that relationship with teachers was?
So with that teacher in particular, I was quite scared of her because God, it's hard to know what to say, isn't it? I think that there are some wonderful, wonderful teachers at school that made my life so much easier. So if we're talking about sixth form, I was in the worst mental space in sixth form because I missed kind of half of first year, half of year 12 because I was in hospital. But actually the reason I was then able to reintegrate back into school was because I had a great support network of, the pastoral team and my teachers, because I only had kind of 3 or 4 teachers then, because obviously you do less subjects. And my relationship with all of those teachers was really good. I felt like they understood me. I felt like they, as teachers, were quite predictable in their behavior. I never felt like I was going to be shouted at. I felt like I could tell them when I was worried about something and they would understand. But kind of going up through from year 7 to sort of, year 11, I couldn't predict how teachers would react in certain situations. You didn't know if they were going to be angry at you or if they were going to understand something or if they weren't going to understand something. Some teachers I just struggled to follow because the way they taught just didn't work with my brain. You know, I'd be doodling during chemistry because that would help me concentrate in subjects I didn't like, and I'd be told to stop doodling, or even taking notes. I used to write notes in science as they spoke because that really helped me to listen, but I would be told I wasn't paying attention. And I think it was when I didn't feel safe with a teacher in terms of not having that relationship and that predictability, I think, and them not understanding me, that is when I got really stressed, I think, in those situations.
So was your sixth form, was that attached to the school, or was that separate?
It was attached to the school, but in my head they were very different experiences.
Okay, that's interesting because my daughter's, their secondary school has a sixth form. And I think some of them feel like they're still at school, which is they find, whereas my daughter went to a college and it's been a breath of fresh air. So I find that really interesting that it can feel like you're still in the place which all those negative feelings, you might be in a separate building, but you're still that same journey.
Yeah, I mean, I said sixth form was the first time that I felt safe at school since primary school. And I think it is because I had that network of people that understood me, and there wasn't that many teachers. You know, I had good relationships with each of them. I had quiet space I could go to. The sixth form building in itself was kind of slightly separate, and there were quiet areas. At that point as well, I was introduced to the Senko, and goodness knows why I didn't. You know, I really, really would have thought I might have been introduced to the Senko slightly earlier on, just to see if there was anything going on.
Maybe.
But from the end of year 12, so year 13 really was when I kind of had contact with the Senko, who was absolutely lovely. And there was a cupboard in the curriculum support area, and I would just go and I would hide in the cupboard, and that was my safe space. And actually, instead of running away from school when I felt stressed, I would run to the cupboard. So yeah, I didn't run away the whole way through sixth form when I had that space.
It's really, and words are saying disappointed. It doesn't justify that for 5 years of your life, when in reality you had no control, you're trusting all the adults around you to do the best thing for you. And the whole education system for those 5 years were probably the worst 5 years of your life.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, year 12 was pretty bad when I was in hospital, but
but that's probably kind of carried over.
Yeah. It was strange. And the thing is, as well, is I know I'm saying about how the teacher, you know, growing up from year 7 to year 11, how kind of my autism wasn't recognised, but they were actually really good at putting in reasonable adjustments anyway, without recognising that. So I was able to drop a GCSE. I didn't have to go to PE. I didn't have to go to assemblies. I was able to go to the library when I needed to. I had a timeout card. I had mentoring sessions. I wasn't actually told off. Like, I wasn't told off when I ran away from school. They knew I just needed to leave lessons and things like that. So actually they were quite good. They had a lot of regular meetings with my parents. Yeah. So they were quite good in some respects.
But that's sort of thing is all those things is amazing they're doing it. It is great. And actually hearing them saying that they did all that and you access that, because I know some people, if you gave them a timeout card, they don't want to be a difference, they wouldn't use it. But the fact all of that went on, it's kind of that external bit. It's what do we need to do is to support them. But actually it's that internal bit. You still didn't feel, because there were just probably too many teachers.
Yeah, there's just a lot on. I don't think it was necessarily any of...
You couldn't say one thing.
No,
there was
just so much on. There was so many kids in a class. Walking around the school grounds was just chaotic and busy. There were so many expectations, different things that would happen. I would just feel anxious a lot. And actually in sixth form, there were smaller classes, just a lot more predictability and certainty. I knew I wasn't going to be told off because they knew me. And I knew what to expect.
And also at sixth form, you're choosing courses which suit you.
Yeah, I loved my subjects.
Which generally means you're going to mix with other people who have the same interests. They're going to be maybe not more like you, but share the same interests. And that's the thing, I think at sixth form, you kind of have quite a big split. So maybe the sporty people go that way, the psychology people go that way, the maths people go that way. And you go start separating out, and you're finding more people that actually you have more stuff in common with, which works.
Yeah, and I would also say as well that the school, they did get me into the system. So it wasn't that they just left, it wasn't that they, I don't know what they were thinking. Perhaps someone along the lines thought, oh, I wonder if she could be autistic, but didn't feel able to say that. I don't know. Because I then did have kind of some sessions with the early intervention team. So I had an assessment with CAMS and then was referred to the early intervention team, and I had kind of CBT. That was after sort of a lot of my OCD and kind of self-harm had come about. And again, yeah, I do, yeah, the lady I worked with was nice, but she obviously didn't have that understanding to be able to recognize that either, which is a shame, because I honestly think a half an hour talk on autism at that point would have would have made someone think, oh, I wonder why she keeps running away whenever there's a loud noise. Yeah.
It's interesting. So you ran away until you had somewhere nice to run to.
Yeah, I mean, they did. So they gave me I did have the library, but there was often be other people in the library. And then also there was a pastoral teacher that I got quite, I found her office kind of a safe place, but she was often busy. And actually I was meant to go to the library, not to her. And it all just got a bit much. And I didn't, and then, the assistant head might come and talk to me about why I was there. And it was all just,
you wanted to be left alone. You wanted a low arousal environment,
yeah,
just to calm down, re-regulate.
Yeah. And I think as well, I would always feel like I had to justify why I wasn't in lessons. And although they were good and they knew, because I would have these massive panic attacks that I was probably quite annoying with. They were like, okay, we don't want to have to deal with this. Whereas in sixth form, I feel like I had more control over, actually, I don't feel able to go to that lesson now. Can I go and do this instead? And they'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
So I'm thinking of your age, because you were in college, 5 years ago?
I left in 2019.
So when you were at college,
sixth form.
Did you have kind of, if you missed work, was it available online at that point?
Not really. I don't think so. It was just, we had, I think in sixth form, the A-level syllabuses. So I only did psychology and English literature because I had to drop my third subject because I was in hospital. I did also do an EPQ. Do you know what an EPQ is? It's an extended project qualification. It's kind of like half an A-level, but it's quite independent. And I did mine on is the use of the Mental Health Act and abuse of human rights, because I was quite angry at that point. So I sort of did all of that, and a lot of it was, you could do it quite independent work. So the teachers could just let me know what they'd been doing in class and I could go over it. I had the books, I had the revision guides, and I pretty much taught myself my GCSEs, and I got 10 A stars at that point. So it was 7 A stars and 3 9s at that point, because we had like 3 subjects that moved to the numbers. And I think I remember my geography teacher kind of giving me, when I went to sign up for A-level, she was like, yeah, you got the highest mark in the year. And I'd literally been in like none of the lessons. And she was like, I just don't know how you did that. And it's just because I had this mind that could just memorize the mark schemes. I could just memorize those mark schemes.
That's the thing is, I got all the qualifications I needed. I stopped at A-levels because I was just bored of education. But I did enough I knew I've done enough to pass. My head just went, you don't need to do any more. You don't really need an A or an A star. You just, as long as you get a C, you'll be fine. So my head just always tells me this. So I never put any effort in because I know I'll pass. And I generally, throughout my life, I always have done, apart from maybe some of my pure maths exams, which were just horrible. But it's a 10 A stars.
Yeah. I was so scared of getting into trouble if I didn't get an A star. Because, so in year 7, again, this maths teacher, I did a test where I did a test. I'd been away for the weekend with my family and I hadn't revised. And on the Monday morning, we had a test, and I think I got something like 75% in it, which was a lot lower than I'd get in the 90s. And she told me off for not having revised. And yes, I hadn't revised. I'd been away for the weekend, I would revise all the time. And it was little moments like that. And I think that once I was expected, they knew that I was sort of an A-star student. And once I got those grades, getting any lower, I felt like I was a massive disappointment. I felt like I hadn't tried hard enough. And also trying your best, I always took that very literally. I didn't know what trying your best meant. I thought that meant revising from the minute I got home till the minute I went to bed. That was hard. And then it got to the point where I sort of wanted 100% in everything because I wanted to be perfect. And I felt like bad things would happen if I wasn't. And
it's really interesting because if you look through my reports, it's like, I remember one of my reports, I got 100% in the end of year exam. The year average was like 60%.
That's good.
But yet they marked my attainment as only like being a 3 out of 5. And I
Your
went,
attainment?
my attainment, my results, I got a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I got 100% on the end of year exam. My effort was a 1 out of 5. I didn't put any effort in. I got that. And I'm going, and they literally wrote in my report, Dale should have done more. And I went, but I got every question you gave me right. What I don't, and I just didn't understand what I was supposed to do. And I just struggled with, what am I supposed to be doing this for? I'm getting the top marks out of this class of the year, but you're saying I'm not working hard enough. No one explained to me what I should be doing, or if you've done this, you should do this, or anything. It was just, I think I spent a lot of my secondary school time just confused and not understanding what I was supposed to be doing at all. I got through it.
When I went back to school after I'd been in hospital in year 12, one of the things I asked for was that they didn't give me my marks and my grades on my side. Like, so I would and at that point, me doing tests and assignments and stuff was literally my choice because they just wanted me in school. And I said, look, I'll write the essay and I'll do it, but I don't want the mark, because if I got, say, I think English essays used to be marked out of something like 25. If I got 21 out of 25, I'd feel stressed because I'd feel like I hadn't done as well as I could have done. And also, like I said, I had the whole OCD stuff around the marks. So yeah, that was actually quite helpful. So they would tell me what I needed to do to improve or how I had done or what to repeat, but not give me the actual mark itself.
You'd hate my daughter's school. She did a test recently where she got 92 out of 160. We're going, I don't know how, I've now learned, I don't know if that is good or bad yet.
It's impossible to know because sometimes 40% is really, really good.
And I'm going, how is 40% really? You're not setting the right test for these children. They should be getting 80s to 90s in my head. So that way, you know, the little bit you got wrong, that's where but she goes, 92, great. What did everyone else get? And she went, 60. And they're going, I don't know why you're sitting this test then. It's just basically telling you can't do stuff, and that's fine. That's a whole.
Or maybe showing the bits that they need to then.
But when that's 70% of the syllabus, that's quite a big. So, yeah. But the reason I asked earlier about did you have your work digitally is my daughter goes to a college where the whole syllabus is online. So if she misses a lesson and she gets a train to college and there's often strikes or cancellations and she misses the lesson, she'll just get on a laptop at home, go to the things, look at the slides, teach it herself and do all the work.
Which is great, but a lot of schools have new policies that they don't set work if you're not at school. So they won't put work online because they think it's encouraging, kids not to attend if they can do it from home. I don't know whether this has popped up since COVID, but I've seen it a lot, and it's really frustrating. So even kids that are sort of not able to go to school, I mean, it is school dependent, it's individual dependent and stuff. But there are cases where kids
policy.
Yeah, they're not able to set work to do at home.
Because if we think of education as preparing you for life and work, as you came into the office today, there's no one here, is there?
And I think this is one of the things that makes my life better now is that I don't have to go to school or even work 5 days a week. I work from home normally 2 days a week, in the office 2 days, and I don't work Mondays.
You must be really failing in your job then.
It's better, isn't it? Because I get more done as well because you're not distracted. Well, it's sort of the balance. I like going into work because I think it's motivating. I do like the colleague interactions. I like being able to kind of reflect with other people. And obviously that's when there's like contact time and stuff. But being able to work from home is when I can hyper focus and get my admin and my tasks actually done. But yeah, sometimes motivation is worse, but sometimes I get more done. It's just that balance. And then it means I'm more regulated on the other days as well.
And I do completely get that. Obviously, we can't have children at home alone. Now, age, and there's a whole thing. There isn't like a set age when you can leave your child at home alone. It depends on every situation. So I completely get that. But we really need to, if we're preparing them for the life of work and adulthood, we need to find a way to bring in that more flexibility. And I know that also for a lot of children, being in school is the safest place to be.
Yes, and there is that there is that argument too, but it's not for all children.
Yes.
And this is where it frustrates me when, the whole new government attendance campaign that came out on the 8th of January, what is it? Moments Matter, Attendance Counts, I think it's called. And it's kind of saying about how every child needs to be in school because it is the best place for children. Yes, it is the safest place and the best place for a lot of children, but there are a lot of children who are very traumatized by their school experiences, who struggle in that environment and actually don't feel safe at school. Yet they're being kind of forced back into that environment, day after day. And then there was a whole Good Morning Britain segment that they did that was school skivers, whose fault, teacher or parents. I started a campaign on Twitter called #NotASchoolSkiver. And there are so many stories of people sharing the reasons why they weren't able to go to school. And it wasn't because they were skiving, and it wasn't their parents' fault or their teacher's fault. It was because there was other things going on.
They simplify it all. And one of the things I find is I think we all do. We think of school exactly as it was when we were there. And it's a very different place these days. There's lots of extra things going on. Social media, phones, vaping, loads of things. But the fact schools are locking toilets and things.
This makes me so mad. It really makes me mad. You know how many medical professionals have to write toilet pass letters for kids because, I don't understand how they can do it. And, when we look at the reasons for non-school attendance, because this was one of the things I looked into and the government is saying that school attendance, I wanted to know, okay, what actually are the reasons? You're posting these posters about, this morning I had a runny nose, one of their posters says, but look at me now, is what one of their, campaign posters says. I was like, okay, let's actually look at the reasons behind school attendance. Sorry, we'll get back to the toilets in a minute.
Cool.
But firstly, 94.3% of school attendance difficulties are underpinned by severe distress. 92.1% are neurodivergent and 83.4% are autistic. So this is a conversation dominated by neurodivergence and dominated by the fact that children's needs aren't being met. Then, there's all the, there's over 800,000 young carers in the UK. The stress on them has increased since COVID. Now, going back to the toilet thing, is that actually PHS Group, they say that periods and the issues surrounding them continue to be the biggest cause of school absence for young people who menstruate in 2023. 54% miss school because of their period, and 36% are stopped from using the toilet in class. What if you just open toilets? I just wonder why we're at the stage where there are so many kids anxious about going to school because they can't go to the toilet when they need to go to the toilet.
My daughter struggles with this. If she literally has cramps and stuff, I'm going mental health day. One of the webinars I do where we look at data, a teacher revealed that her children with 90 to 95% attendance make more progress than those children with 100% attendance.
Oh, that's interesting. Don't hear the government saying that. They compare it to the lowest statistics, don't they?
And you hear the other one is, I had a runny nose this morning, but now look at me. The next day, 30 children with runny noses. The next day, half the school are off.
And I just think the government needs to look at the other causes for it. In May 2023, more than 400,000 children were waiting for hospital appointments, which is the highest number ever recorded. There's been a lot of referrals into paediatric services. The waiting lists are massive. Financial difficulties have increased massively. There are a lot more people accessing food banks. All of those have knock-on effects, or they're all at least correlated with the mental health difficulties. Yep. Whether it's cause or effect, who knows. But look at those other reasons for school absence and what's being done about it.
It's huge. And I think, as far as my knowledge, my kids are much older now. Primary schools generally seem really good because you do have that one teacher, you have that relationship, and you will feel supported. It's secondary school is where it really starts to all go wrong. But it's a really hard, challenging time. It's not a simple fix. You can't just go, this is what you need to do. It's a really multifaceted issue but I do feel schools are being so strict and over controlling, removing all the trying to prepare, but I don't know anywhere else which is that controlling apart from prison and armed services.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
There was an academy which had a video and it was showing that the children are walking around the school in silence. And it's just like, that's not healthy.
It's difficult, and it really depends on the child. I just think it depends on the child, it depends on what they need. Some children I do think work really well with rules and with knowing exactly what is expected of them. Some children I think would actually benefit from the silence, but then there are obviously kids that don't benefit from that. And I don't know how. Yeah, like I said before, I don't know what the answer is to our current school system.
No, I always remember being in a special school in the entrance hall, and there was these two kids came in, and one had ear defenders on and obviously struggled with loud noises. And the other child came in and wanted to go to his classroom, but they had to wait for someone to take him to his classroom. He's not allowed to walk around school on his own. But that person was delayed, and he was dysregulated and couldn't cope. So he's getting louder and louder and more aggressive. This other child is getting more dysregulated because of the noise, and this person, they just want quiet and still. And they're both trapped in this room. And it was just like, you can't get both right in this situation. You can't make one rule which will work for both of these children.
Yeah, you can't. And I just think it's never going to be perfect unless every single parent is able to homeschool. And when I say homeschooling, I don't just mean sitting in a room at home. I mean, there are so many different homeschooling groups. There are forest schools. There are, you can have children can really thrive, I think, because it's so much more, personalized. But in terms of the school system, like, there's never going to be a perfect answer, but there is things that, can be done or even are already being done. There are brilliant teachers working, in schools, and I think I'm often very critical of schools and stuff, but there are some amazing teachers that make such a difference to those children and those young people, giving them, just one trusting relationship in a child's life has the power to change a lot for that child. And like you said, schools can be the safest space for a lot of kids as well. And there are schools that put in place those reasonable adjustments. I've seen there was a teacher on the news last week, and he was showing kind of the different movement breaks that he uses in the classroom. He said something about having mini trampolines in their classrooms. This is a primary school. And because of the ADHD medication shortage at the moment, they're having to use more kind of inventive ways. And so that there is stuff that can be done. Like, I know there was stuff that was put in place for me at school that actually, although school was really, really hard, the fact that I stayed in school, I think, is a massive credit to what they did for me, and also, I suppose, my own determination as well. But if they hadn't done all of that, I mean, I was described as on the verge of school refusing. And actually, my doctor in hospital said that he didn't think I was well enough to go back to school. But I wanted to, because I had known my teachers were nice. I had a good group of friends, which I was so lucky to have that. So yeah, there is stuff that is being done and that can be done. But in terms of getting it perfect, yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be.
But it's interesting because at primary school, they can and they often do kind of respond to each individual child, and your classroom over that year will be based on the children in that class. But I think, again, at secondary school, but also in some primary schools, and I don't know if Matt's a part of this, but we're kind of creating this formulaic approach, that we're creating this thing that all 12 schools will be identical and they will all follow this policy. And what we actually want is a couple of schools, secondary school in the area, right? That's going to be a quiet secondary school. That's going to be a noisy secondary school. That's going to be this secondary school. And you can go, right, actually quiet, that's going to suit me. But actually, he's a bit more energetic, go to that school because that'll be really help him. It's really sport. That sort of thing. We actually kind of want the schools to be different so that different children go to the schools which work for them, rather than trying to create one school which works for everyone.
Yeah. But then I think, just a very devil's advocate, with the quiet schools, so I do know of schools, so the maybe smaller secondary schools, where they end up having a large number of kind of neurodivergent children because they're quieter and they're smaller, and actually they don't have the resources necessarily to support that amount of kids. And because they all need all of these reasonable adjustments, I don't think they always get them, compared to if they're one child in a classroom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of easier to give one child in a classroom regular movement breaks, being able to go out, than it is to give half of the kids.
But not when it's against the school policy, it's not.
Oh, it's so hard. And the fact is, if the government is so concerned about school attendance, then they need to really look into what they're doing with kind of SEND and kids that require additional support. 98% of tribunals are won by parents and families. Only 2% of refusals by the councils to provide additional support is upheld by tribunals, which in my head suggests that 98% of the time they're actually acting against the SEND law. And then that leads to persistent absence. There are so many kids out of school because they don't have the right placements. So why is the government not making that more of a priority? And also, it costs the taxpayer £60 million a year. I don't know. I found
it interesting. So 90, all those things. You look at it different ways. Like all those tribunals. That's all those parents are fighting for their child to be in school. That's the thing. They're not going, you know what? Yeah, school's not important. They know it's important. They know it is the best thing for their child, but it's got to be a school and a placement that works for their. They've got to have that support. So the parents know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Is one of the things. It always looks like school is not the problem. It's everyone else who's the problem. And I do see lots of things. I'm not saying every teacher. There are amazing teachers. You said I was at a conference last week. Amazing people. But there are these things that school should be rigid and this because that's how it was when I was, whatever it is, that reasoning. And we need to change. It has to change. It has to be more accepting, more open, the way workplaces have gone.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them are much more open and accepting. And when I say £60 million a year, that's how much we're paying because of the tribunal. I think because of the tribunals, if I'm correct, it's not because of, the needs and support, but
yeah, it's shocking numbers, and it is parents fighting to get their child into education, and yet
they're the first ones to be blamed when their kids aren't in school, and so many of them are caught in a, I don't know, such a difficult situation because they're being told to send their child to school, but they know that sending their child to school makes them incredibly distressed, and they're being told that actually, well, yeah, but you can't give in to it. The more that they go in, the less anxious they'll be. We know that's not true. We just know that's not true. Repeatedly exposing a child to that environment that causes them that amount of stress doesn't lessen the stress.
Nope.
Especially if they're neurodivergent, which, like I said, 92%? Yeah, 92% are who have those persistent difficulties. And yet then they're the ones that are kind of prosecuted and sent fines, even though there is no evidence to suggest that those fines actually help those with persistent absence get back into school, but then there's evidence to show that how harmful it is.
And when they appear, fine, I'm air quoting appear, that's what's called masking. So mum dad wants me to go into school. Teachers want me to go into school. This is the worst thing in the world. I absolutely hate it, but I want to make mum and dad happy. So I'm going to say everything is fine. I'm going to tell the school everything is fine, even though I cannot stand this. And this is taking every bit of energy in my body just to be there. I will say, I'm scared school's great.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not saying that, so when parents are kind of stuck in those situations, I don't think, obviously it's so child dependent, isn't it? Because for some children, there are specific situations in school when actually they look at them and they make those adjustments and sort them out. And that makes them, much happier and more able to go in. Sometimes it is just a blip and they get through that and then they are more happy at school again. But for some children, it just really doesn't work for them.
As you were saying, is your secondary school had all those adjustments going on, and it still kind of wasn't supporting you. It wasn't quite the right environment.
Yeah, it's weird because it's so weird and by the time I got to year 13, I was so upset about leaving school because I couldn't deal with the change. You've never experienced life without school that I could remember. And the idea of leaving, I ended up having kind of a depressive episode. I was readmitted to the CAMS unit because I was so stressed about leaving school. And I think it's so difficult because I had such a great group of friends and I loved being with those friends, and my teachers were amazing and they got me through some really difficult times. And I'm so glad that I had them too. But I think, maybe the school environment itself, did trigger a lot of anxiety.
But it's interesting because, you said you then got that support, you started feeling, and it was like, what's after this? It wasn't a case of you thought you obviously, reflecting back, it's really always hard, but did you think there's going to be no one here supporting me? I'm leaving all this support behind and my life's going to be really, really hard without this support? Or was it just completely, I have no idea what's next?
A bit of both. You turn 18, I was being discharged from my CAMS worker, I was leaving my youth group, I was losing all of these teachers. I felt like I was, that actually, the support network was gone. But I think it was also the change. It was just change. And I really struggle with change. I couldn't picture what my life was going to be like. So I was going to uni. And although I really wanted to train to be a mental health nurse, I didn't know if I could. I was still a bit unwell really when I kind of started that. But actually the purpose of training to be a nurse really helped me, I think, move forwards. But yeah, it was just all the change. It was the uncertainty. It was the fact that I couldn't envision what life would be like because I'd never seen it before. And I think for autistic people especially, not being able to picture something you've not experienced is very anxiety provoking.
It's really, so my daughter's been looking at universities for the last year and a bit. She'll be hopefully going to university in September this year. And it's amazing what I'm seeing as an adult who, I didn't go to university, but I had offers and went and viewed them all. And I had loads of friends, so I know what university is like, and I've been to universities and stuff. So what I'm taking from an event or seeing at a university or thinking about is completely not what my daughter is. And she's only knows what's been given information. Well, I'm putting that bit of information they've given me into a big bank of other information I know about universities. My daughter hasn't got that. And just watching her being really anxious about, and when she gets her, here's your offer, you have to get these qualifications. And she's going, so if I don't, I can't go to uni. And it's like, well, what's the different levels? And it's just not there. And it's a lot of uncertainty. And it's just interesting watching her. I was like, why are you worrying? Because this. I'm like, but it's just it. And it's me realizing I have all this information that I'm really using. But when you're young, and especially if you haven't got older siblings who've gone to university before and you've seen the process, if you're the first person, it's really, you have no idea what's coming.
No. And at that age, you still feel, well, I did anyway, still felt like I needed to do what everyone else was doing. And I couldn't just, choose my own path. So I originally applied for psychology, and I was going to go away from home. I had offers at Bristol and Sussex. And as the time got closer and closer, I just realised I couldn't. And so I didn't. I stayed at home and I went to the local uni to do mental health nursing. And I would not have coped at uni. Every time I went up and stayed with my friends, the whole environment was too stressful. I think it triggered my OCD and my anxiety. And yeah, and I think at the time I had a good few people say to me, oh, why are you not going away from home? And actually, why are you going to that uni? You're so clever. Like you could do better than that effectively. But it wouldn't have been best for me.
That's the thing I do think of. If you hear the number of A stars you've got, you'll be going, oh, Oxford, Cambridge, that's what you should be going. But that's
what my grandmother had always hoped.
But that's when we literally take the academic performance as the only factor. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of us do, is we look at someone's grades and we make a decision on that whole person. Oh, they got 10 A stars. They must be a very well-rounded person because they've really got it all together to get 10 A stars.
And at that age, academics is what you have known. It's what's been drilled into you. It's literally, other than holidays, that's what you're thinking about. Whereas by the time, even now I'm in my early 20s, academics, so what? Like there's so much more to life than what uni you went to. But at that age, it's so important, especially if you're a high achiever and a perfectionist. I felt like so much of my identity was rooted in academics and in what grades I got, that I felt like if I didn't go to a really good uni, I'd be letting people down. And that was kind of hard to adjust to, I think, and come to terms with.
I think it is. It's a bit of a conveyor belt of, this is what you must do. This is when you must do it. You will get out of university at 21, and then you're kind of told from quite early on, this is a conveyor. This is where you're going to end up. And I remember I had a place at university and I got enough grades that I got the place. And I just went, I don't want to do that. And it was partly because I'd worked at IKEA and I'd earned quite a bit of money, but the degree wasn't the direct path where I wanted to go. It was kind of a meandering route. And I was going, I don't know if I'm going to want to do it. And it was just a real, and I suppose I just chickened out. I literally just went, if I fail, it's going to, so I chickened out of going to university is the real short answer. Because I just went, I don't think this is for me.
But did you chicken out, or did you just realise it wasn't for you?
I now realise that, but at the time, I can't tell you, but it was that, I don't, if I didn't go, I couldn't fail. It's that sort of feeling. So I didn't go. And then for that first definitely that first term or year, I felt like because everyone else I knew went to university and all my friends just went. And I was just like, oh, I'm really alone. And then I think by March or February of that year, I realized, no, I'm working full time. I've got a load of different friends around me. And when I met up with those people, it's like we had both completely changed. I was in the work environment working with older people. They were still kind of like how I was at college, just drinking and having fun. So it was a real interesting kind of 1 minute I thought I've really missed out. To actually going, not with different people, we just, our lives had changed. And I was happy with mine, but it took me a while to realize that because I wasn't going the path that everyone else said I should have.
And it's the whole, oh, you'll miss out on the uni experience. It's not for everyone. The idea of clubbing, and I did do a bit of clubbing and stuff, but that sort of idea, it just made me so anxious. I just wasn't for me. So what if I did a lot of other wholesome things instead, I did a lot of stuff with my time at uni instead of all the partying that people expect you to do.
The thing is, my daughter going to university, we're looking at some very different universities and trying to work out which one is the one for her, because they're all very different. And some of them could be very comfortable for her, but actually she might need to be challenged depending on what her career after that's good. So it's been a real trying to work out what is going to fit for her.
Mm. And I also think that, yeah, finding what you think is going to be best for you is so important. But also, is there really a right answer? Because whatever you try, even if it's not right for you, it will teach you something. And actually, she will, even if she starts uni, and then kind of 6 months down the line, like, yeah, she'll have used 6 months of student finance, but actually if she changes her mind and goes, actually, this isn't for me, I need to get out of here, that's fine. She'll have learned something in that process. And I think those uni years and into your 20s is just, it's all about, developing who you are and understanding your kind of needs and stuff. And I just think that, there's no wrong answer, even if it doesn't work out.
No, there isn't. Everyone's life is different. And a qualification on a piece of paper you got when you're 16 does not define you when you're 20 or any age older.
No, and I can't believe how many meltdowns and panic attacks I had over it now, looking back. But it's so hard when you're stuck in that, especially when you have an autistic brain and, all you can see is what is in front of you. And that stress just builds up.
And no matter how many times people told you it doesn't matter, no matter how many externally you got told that, it didn't change you internally, did it?
No, but I also wonder, so I went to kind of quite an academic school. So I got in on exam. And so my parents would tell me that, but I don't think I heard that from school really until maybe later on. And by that point, it was kind of a bit too embedded in me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. My daughters are very, very different. Yeah, I swear I've brought them up the same. But as Ali Knowles said, is my youngest daughter can always watch my eldest and know everything's going to be fine because she's always gone to school. So school's fine because she's gone there. College is fine. It's everything. My youngest just has more confidence because she's that second child.
And she's been able, so like she can see what that's like a little bit.
So she has no worries because it's going to be fine. Whereas my poor eldest child, she is the first person to do anything.
And I'm the eldest as well.
And so everything is, I have no idea what moving out away from home is going to feel like. My youngest will watch her. She'll go down half term to see her at uni and go, God, this is great fun. But completely not acknowledge all the stress my other daughter has gone through getting there. So just first child, second child, even if you bring up the same, they're having a very different experience. Because now, if you're the first and you got 10 A stars, your poor brothers and sisters were competing against you.
I mean, we couldn't be more different, really.
But it doesn't matter. They're still competing against you, and there's nothing you can change that. And that's the same whether you watch, I was youngest, and you watch your sisters get their results. And the expectation is you had to beat them. And I went, I can't, so I didn't bother.
I just wish that children, teenagers, young people could just see how much wider the world is and how much wider life is than school and grades, because they can't see that. They can't see what it's like to be an adult because they've not been there, especially, like I said, if they've got that autistic brain. And sometimes I just wish someone could have shown me my future And actually, because I would never have been able to imagine what my life is like now. I could never imagine my anxiety being any lower than it was, and actually having, more control and autonomy about life, and just being able to do fun stuff and not have to worry about school and grades and stuff. And also all the other stuff going on in my head. I couldn't even see myself getting out of that psychiatric unit when I was in there. Couldn't see myself getting my A-levels, and I did. Each step I managed to do. And it's almost like now, I feel like now there's no more steps, because I've done all the academic, I've done all the education stuff. What's next? I suppose society would possibly say marriage and children. That would be the next step. But, I know that, there's no more steps. Life is just ahead of you, and that you can do whatever you want with it, really.
Yes.
And I just wish young people could see that.
That's the thing. You do see inspirational things like somebody going, oh yeah, I failed out of school at this age. I wrote my first book age 54 and won my first Booker Prize age 50. Or whatever. You're literally going to see going, yeah, life's, there isn't this one set. There's so many routes. And I have the conversation with my daughters, when you compare different people and you go, is that person more successful than me? And it's like, depends how you're measuring it. What is your version of success? What is their version of success? Because if they're completely different, you're not even measuring. It's what's their goal.
But also, especially for young people, they are imagining them going through all the future situations as they are now. So they're imagining them being the same person, going, dealing with all of the future. But we are so many different versions of ourselves throughout our lives. Like, even I'm such a different person to who I was 2 years ago, or let alone at 18 or 16. But you can't see that. You think, oh my goodness, this is me now, and I'm going to have to go through that. But it's you, but you'll have grown and developed so much that it won't be as hard as you think it will be by that point.
Because every time you take a step forward, you look back and go, I've done it. And that carries you on. So at those steps, or might be the same size, might be bigger, but well, I've taken all of those steps, so I can take this step.
Yeah. It's impossible for us to know how we're going to feel, in 5 years' time, or what we're going to want to do, because it will all change.
Yes, completely. I'm going to wrap it up there, because we've been chatting a long time and I could keep chatting, but I think we should wrap it up, because some people have done an extra lap on their walk just to keep listening.
Wow. Can we have the cool sounds?
You want the cool sounds again?
I do, yeah. The pink and the purple. Yeah.
So thank you for coming on the show today.
That makes me so happy.
I wonder if I'll ever use them again. I'll be putting a link to Emily's book. So you've written Girl Unmasked, How Uncovering My Autism. And it's not just this is what happened, because I've literally, in my very busy week, when I planned to read it, didn't get a chance. I've just read the prologue, which was very, I'm going to say, creative writing, because I'm not a writer.
Yeah, half of it reads as kind of a story of my life. So you read it as if it's happening. And then the other half is sort of non-fiction. So kind of, about autism and mental health.
It's one of the ones, because I read the first part, went, I am going to read this book. And I said before we started recording, I'm not a big reader. It really has to I want to read it, because it is one of those areas where, as I learn about myself all the time, and every kind of week or 2 weeks, I'm learning something different about me that someone just mentions. Oh, that's an autistic thing. It's like, what? Oh, I wish I'd known that 20 odd years ago. So I am going to go read it. And
you listen to the audiobook if you like.
And who reads the audiobook?
Me. It was a very interesting experience recording it. Fun, but there's a lot of retakes.
There's a couple of clips on Twitter of you trying to do it, and get the microphone, get the thing, and it's quite scary all of a sudden.
Do you know what though? I think the outtakes, the bits that got cut, would probably have been a lot more entertaining than the actual book itself.
And that's why on the podcast we generally don't edit it, because it makes every person feel more human. Whereas if it's perfect,
you're going to cut out some of the coughs.
No.
Oh.
Well, I might not. We'll see. Yeah, I might. So thanks for coming today. So there's a link in the show notes to find Emily's book on Amazon, so you can go and buy it. And I've also shared her website, her Instagram, her Twitter, so you can find out more and follow Emily. And you'll find all of those show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. So thank you for listening to the show. If you aren't following us on social media, you'll follow us on the Twitters or X. I still don't like that. Facebook and Instagram, just by searching for the Zencast. And the Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. We help show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make, but do you know about Autism Progress? This is our framework for helping profile a pupil's autism and how it impacts them. It's based on certs and looks at communication, social interaction, emotional regulation, and flexible thinking. And Autism Progress also includes a wide range of strategies to help support the pupils. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and Autism Progress. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It is goodbye from me and
Goodbye from me. Thank you very much.
bye, everyone.